The police told her she was lucky. She could hardly believe their nerve. What great luck to be attacked in an alley as she was walking home from work. They'd found Susie huddled in the shadows of a dumpster, looking at what remained of her attacker when they'd arrived. Tears were streaming down her cheek as she clutched her knees to her chest. The paramedics had checked her over, and apart from a few bruises and scratches, she'd suffered no injuries. Perhaps the only bit of luck she'd had that night was a stray brick lying in the puddle as the attacker had pinned her down and began ripping off her clothes. The noise she made when she'd managed to twist and strike him across the face with it had made her choke back the vomit in her mouth, but it had been effective, sending him sprawling on his back onto the damp concrete. He was clutching his scalp, crimson already leaking down his face from between his fingers. "You bitch!" he grunted the words. Susie couldn't believe his nerve to complain at her for fighting back. Her adrenaline and anger coursed through her body as she raised the brick above his head and brought it down. The crunch of bone mixed in the cold night air with his screams and her cries of effort. She didn't stop, bringing the brick down on his head again and again until all that was left was a bloody mess of bone, blood, and brains. Only then did she take a breath, looking down on what remained of him through her tear-filled eyes. She slumped back, shaking, to call the police, and she didn't move until they found her. She was lucky, the prosecutors told her when they decided not to take it any further, calling her action self-defense. They couldn't tell which blow had killed him, they said. She was beginning to hate that word, lucky. She'd said that when Susie attended therapy for the first time. It had been 6 weeks since the attack when she first met her therapist, choosing to pay for them privately rather than wait for the state. Joe, his name was. He'd been a huge help talking her through her recovery and suggesting outlets for her emotions. She tried writing first, but couldn't find the words to put down on paper, just scrawling the word lucky again and again through her tear-filled eyes. When they talked once more, he'd suggested trying art therapy next. Susie had tried that enthusiastically, but staring at a canvas covered in blood red and black smears couldn't give her what she needed. She needed to reclaim her life, to take control. So here she was, perched on a bar stool in a little black dress, making eyes at the barman over a martini as he grinned back. She was swirling the olive absent-mindedly, barely actually drinking, as she talked to the man cleaning the bar in front of her. She'd already decided he was a harmless boy, just flirting with a pretty older woman to increase his tips. It wasn't him she was here for. Potential suitors came and went. She found a reason to dismiss most of them, mostly because, well, they were married. Some had been silly enough to leave their rings on. Others had the skin indentations where it should have been. Marriage meant another innocent woman. Perhaps children. Perhaps even a pet. She wanted to avoid bringing other people into this. She'd chosen him as he grabbed her arse as he stood next to her at the bar. Before he'd even spoken a single word to her, his big sweaty palm was sizing up her rear. Susie looked him up and down. He made her skin crawl. His belly was barely contained within a greying shirt that was at least a size too small for him. His puffy red face raised in a yellowing smile as he grinned at her. He must have thought his luck was in. He was clearly 20 years her senior. He was easily led upstairs to the waiting bedroom Susie had secured earlier. She was careful, always booking under a fake name. Deposit and room paid in cash, face hidden from CCTV by dark sunglasses and an oversized hat. Susie didn't ask for his name. He asked for hers and she lied, calling herself Maria. Her prey was just too eager to follow her pretty hips and beckoning finger into that hotel room. She told him to get undressed, holding back the urge to vomit as his belly fell out of his pants. All good things, she cooed. She was in control now. Nimble fingers reached for her zipper to reveal her ivory flesh. Hair, makeup, underwear, everything was just perfect. He was leering now, breathing increasing as his excitement grew. It was a ritual now. She climbed the bed. She'd chosen matching black lace bra and panties for tonight, and it was working perfectly. Susie had planned everything so perfectly. This one, like most of the others, were all too willing to be blindfolded, and gentle whispers in the ears of those who objected soon changed their minds. Ruby red lips turning into a smile as she used the crimson silk scarves to hold the fat man in place and to cover his eyes. He called her kinky and dirty, anticipating what would come next. He knew she was there, crawling up over his body. She squeezed him firmly between her toned thighs. Susie loved how he leaned forward, straining in his muscles as he craved her. If anyone would have been watching, it looked like she was leaning forward to meet his kisses. But her hand sneaked below the pillows, and she pulled back. She stared for a moment, took a breath. Susie ploughed the knife she'd hidden beneath the pillow into his chest. She didn't stop, blood spraying everywhere. The man beneath her screamed in pain. She screamed in a cathartic release of rage as the dark red blood rained down on her and the pristine white sheets. She continued her thrusts even after they stopped twitching. Only then did she pause to brush her blood-soaked hair away from her face and smile broadly at her handiwork. Now for a shower. Susie took the time for her to look through his wallet out of curiosity as she got changed into her sweatpants and hoodie, her outfit packed into the gym bag at her side. She took the bills and left the rest next to the body. Not many people would see her leaving at this time of night. She'd already picked the next town, and she wanted to get there before the cleaner had even found this body. Besides, Susie was hungry. She wanted pancakes. She was in luck. There was a diner an hour down the freeway, which did the greatest stack of blueberry pancakes smothered in maple syrup. On her second refill of steaming strong black coffee, she pondered what therapy had told her about needing an outlet. She'd gotten her release. Catharsis had been achieved for now. This was the new Susie.